Today we will consider the question of 3 unexplained mysteries that will obviously never be explained. The first mystery worth mentioning is the former capital of Rus, St. Petersburg. If we put aside the chatter of guides for a minute, repeating a beautiful legend, we will immediately encounter a bunch of pressing questions. Where was the city built? On foreign territory, all maps show that in 1700, the year the city was founded by Peter the Great, it was Swedish land, not Moscow. What and how can you build a city during a war on foreign land? Is this reasonable, logical? Is this a joke? Then, the city was not only built in an incredible time frame, in 30 to 40 years, but also the embankments and canals were faced with stone, first with rough cobblestones, then with polished tiles, and they drum into us that everything was done with chisels by illiterate peasants. And they delivered the entire mass, which was up to 5 million tons of granite by horse and cart on roads, which of course did not exist then. Take one fact, simple brick, from which buildings were erected. If you calculate its quantity, then roughly up to 700 million pieces of products were required, and in modern large factories produce only 1 million per year. So, it was simply impossible to build a capital city in 30 years together with churches, especially during the war with the Swedes. The army is constantly on campaigns and the treasury is empty. The next oddity is that buildings, like the famous Hermitage, do not have any drawings. For some reason, they have not survived, and the giants themselves are still standing. But paintings have survived, which include St. Isaac's Cathedral, which should not have existed for another 20 years. And the cathedral itself is a continuous question and not a single answer. Look, the columns of this structure weigh 100 tons each, but there are not just 1 or 2 of them. Below there are 48 columns 70 meters high. At a height of 43 meters above the ground there are another 24 columns, each 14 meters high. A total of 1,000 columns in the building. And all this was transported, hewn, polished, raised by builders without education, vast shoemakers. Another fact is the Alexander column weighing more than 600 tons. It is impossible to process such a column with jewelry precision even now, as well as to find a suitable block of solid stone up to 60 meters long. And then how was it possible to deliver it at that time? Where was it processed? How was it rotated? What was it polished with? The story that it was polished with sand makes the craftsman laugh. The column is 50 meters long, and it is not cracked anywhere, not pierced by veins of quartz. In recent years, and many enthusiasts have raised the question, why are many buildings covered with soil up to the 2nd floor and never dug out? Only a highly qualified scientist can assume that they built like this. And then the houses magically sank into the soil, which historians call the cultural layer, and new doors were knocked through at the level of the 2nd floor. And another question, why are all the monuments to supposedly Russian heroes, Suvorov for example, made in the style of Roman or Greek classicism? The same elements of weapons everywhere, togas, tunics, sandals everywhere, and this in the Russian north. Where is there snow for 6 months? At the same time, all the facts are easy to explain if we assume that the city was built by another civilization. And after the flood that destroyed almost the entire population, many years later, when the water went away, retreated, the abandoned city was dug out of mud and clay. Today we will consider the question of 3, and even then in parts and not completely. Then everything becomes clear, and the monuments are alien, classical and gigantic structures, and houses hidden by soil for 2-3 meters, and the lack of drawings. Conclusion, we will not solve this mystery. We will not find out the truth, because the authorities do not want to solve it, and ordinary researchers do not have the means to do this. After all excavations, serious investments are needed here. But as in Egypt, the authorities do not want to strain themselves. Officials all over the world are the same. They do not care about the truth. Impressive. And isn't it? And these are just a couple of facts. Let's move on, the second fact. Now a few words about the mysterious German base, codenamed Base 211, and about New Swabia. I will try not to stir up horror, I will simply give the facts. So, it is well known that Hitler was an active member of secret societies, in particular THUL, and other organizations that aim to elevate the white Aryan race. Naturally, the economic reasons for any war or serious changes in society are always hidden from the crowd, because propaganda is constantly being improved, and its task is simple, to convince himself that he himself makes his own free choice, supporting the government. You are worth it, as the slogan says. TUL and later Ananurb set themselves the goal of learning to manage society and gain technical superiority over competitors. But both tasks were solved by them in a very unusual way. These organizations, similar to knightly orders, and actively used mystical and unrecognized by scientists in the world methods of obtaining information. Yes, they involved astrologers, telepaths, and even Tibetan shamans in their work, used drugs to put their researchers into a trance and establish contact with alien mind. Many will consider this nonsense, but facts are stubborn things. German scientists lacked several months, maybe half a year, and to complete the development of an atomic bomb, and this is according to US intelligence. Messerschmitt jets were manufactured, and albeit in single copies, but they actually managed to fly and demonstrate their advantage in speed. In parentheses, we note that many pilots were unable to transfer to the controls of the new aircraft, and they got lost and did not have time to monitor the situation at such speeds. And if we talk about flying saucers, they were developed, and what is especially important, their engines and power plants were based on new principles unknown to the world. Maybe that is why no one was able to complete all these projects. We repeat, sent, dictated to researchers by the Hylian mind. It doesn't matter what exactly was meant by these words. Now I'll puzzle you. Yakov Blumin is the son of an Odessa Jew who was a member of the Socialist Revolutionary Party during the Russian Revolution in 1917. Yes, the revolution, the Civil War, it's too distant a past, but nevertheless, this lively adventure played his role in our history. He killed the German Aftermacht in Moscow in 1918. At that time, Lenin demanded that his comrades conclude peace with Germany on any terms. But the socialist revolutionaries did not want to kneel before the Germans, and so they committed such a political murder. Later, Ban Blumin was sentenced to death for this murder, and only the intervention of the Russian Robespierre, Leon Trotsky, saved his life. And after the Civil War, this comrade in arms was sent away from Moscow. He became an agent of the Cheka in Mongolia and Tibet, visited the mountains and, as legend has it, even contacted the Dalai Lama. He worked in China and India, recruited agents, in a word, he was very active, allowing himself many liberties. In particular, after contacts with the Tibetans, he compiled an extensive report on his expedition to a secret world hidden from ordinary inhabitants of the planet. The essence can be described as follows. Under the strong upper layer of the Earth's crust, there is another world, a second sphere. And its inhabitants are significantly ahead of us in many matters, both in technical development and in matters of spiritual practices. And the passage to this world is practically closed to mere mortals. But the chosen ones receive information from that underground world. The Dalai Lama also knows about it. When Trotsky was sent into exile, he advised Yakov to also flee. Therefore, Blumin tried to sell his secret knowledge, his information, to the Germans, who also visited Tibet. They say he demanded several million for this. After which he returned to Moscow and continued working in the foreign department of the Cheka. But information about Blumin's contacts with German intelligence leaked to the Cheka. He was given up by one of his abandoned lovers, and soon Blumin was arrested and executed. General Ivashov, a former employee of the USSR General Staff, spoke about the existence of Blumin's report on the underground world. So this is not empty chatter, believe me. And now let's put together our stained glass window. Everyone has heard that the Germans founded their base in Antarctica 2011, planning to create New Swabia. Why? What were they looking for far from Germany? Or it turns out that the Germans believed that there were secret passages to another world at the poles, in the cavities of our Earth, and Blumin's report played its role in this. Therefore, German ships visited the uninhabited ice continent and tried to understand how to penetrate these cavities under the ice shell, for which they later used submarines. Here is a quote from the report of the Flight Expedition Commander Richter from 1939. For the first time, German aircraft flew over the Antarctic continent. Pennants were dropped every 25 kilometers. We covered an area of approximately 600,000 square kilometers. Of these, 350,000 were photographed. Russian researchers have found information in archival documents about successful submarine voyages to Queen Maud Land, where sailors found a path to caves with warm riverbeds. And my submariners have discovered a real earthly paradise, Admiral D. Nitz boasted at the time. Yes, all this raises doubts. To risk and dive under the ice without any landmarks, isn't that too fantastic? And during the war, but there is no contradiction here. And as sailing in the waters of Antarctica was a vacation for sea wolves, because out of 720 submarines, 640 were sunk during the war. Out of 40,000 crew members, 30,000 died, and yes, they managed to find passages in the ice, There were even pilot charts indicating the depths and courses leading to cavities under the ice. Russian submariners seriously considered them, looking for an opportunity to go along the same route. But no one has been able to repeat these expeditions and probably never will be able to. After all, warm currents constantly change the relief of ice layers and shift huge icebergs. In 10 to 20 years, the road changes completely. Who would risk diving now and moving blindly between 1,000-ton blocks, risking being crushed in the cracks? Therefore, this mystery will never be solved, because the participants of these expeditions have already grown old and left our world. And then we can only guess whether the scientists of NNRBE have found a passage to another world, or all this is just a dream of mystics. Third question. Now for the final, the third part of our story. Let's look at a few colorful fragments of our stained glass window. So, we all remember how the gods of ancient Egypt, or the Sumerian gods, or for that matter, were depicted on clay tablets or tomb walls in a peculiar tradition, always in profile, holding symbolic items. Would these could be symbols of power like these, or something more imposing, staffs, for example? And then, would those mysterious bags the gods carry? Look closely, there are lots of them. They appear not just in Egypt. Doesn't that make you wonder? There are many theories about what these bags really were. And one idea is that they were water vessels, symbols of divine authority, holy water used by gods to heal their loyal servants. Oh, but hold on. In Egypt, when the contents of bags or baskets were shown, they were often drawn from a top-down view, here revealing fruits or other items. Why then has no one ever depicted the contents of these particular bags? There's also a theory that these bags were life support backpacks for the gods. They do resemble astronaut gear, something you'd see when boarding a spaceship. But again, something doesn't add up. Why would gods carry such weight themselves if they're surrounded by servants? And were they really wearing spacesuits? No. We see them in simple tunics. Now let's turn to another striking fragment. Have you heard of Maxwell Chikumbutso? No. Well, and unlike billionaire Elon Musk, Maxwell never even finished high school. Life forced him to earn a living from a very young age. And now, this inventive guy is turning our entire understanding of energy upside down. Because he's created a battery, get this, that doesn't need recharging. That's right, his battery doesn't charge at night or during the day, and it doesn't need electricity. Even more incredibly, when you park your car at home, and this battery can power your home grid. Sure, there's a limit, it's just a car, not a nuclear plant. Maxwell started by powering his TV, and now that TV runs continuously unplugged, practically eternal. So, where does his battery draw energy from? Not out of thin air, right? And here's the twist, yes, from the air. According to Maxwell, his batteries absorb energy from the atmosphere. They feed on radio waves and other frequency bands. That's his claim. Could this be nonsense? A publicity stunt by an African con artist? Well, we established experts who dismissed his ideas early on certainly think so. But here's the catch: starting in 2025, Chikumbutso's cars have entered serial production. His battery pack, which looks very much like those godly bags, is now being manufactured at scale. So the question remains, could those ancient bags of the gods also be energy sources? Maybe ancient artists never drew their contents because they didn't know how to depict energy. There were no symbols for it yet. Yes, it's an unsolved mystery, but it remains unsolved because scientists around the world think alike. Their motto is childishly simple. It can't be true because it contradicts our theories. That's why Chikumbutso has no patents. It's like that joke about the elusive Joe. Why is Joe so elusive? He's right there in the saloon. Because no one's even looking for him? The same goes for the eternal battery. Whether the scientific community doesn't want to see it. There's no mystery, get it? And remember how Nikola Tesla died in poverty, ignored and forgotten? His sponsors abandoned him. Why? Isn't it ironic? At a time when the world lacks energy, when wars are fought over oil, gas, offshore deposits, uranium, scientists reject inventions that could save humanity. Now that is the greatest mystery of all. What do you think? Discover phenomenal individuals and incredible yet real events on this channel.